Software Engineering Radio, episode 110, Roles in Software Engineering, part 2.
This is Software Engineering Radio, the podcast for professional developers on the web at se-radio.net. SE Radio brings you relevant and detailed discussions and interviews on software engineering topics every 10 days. Thanks to our audience and the partners listed on our website for support. Hello listeners, welcome to part 2 of the Roles episodes. Hello Michael.
Hello Markus.
Once again, Michael is responsible mostly for the content and I do the questioning. So let me briefly summarize what we did in the last episode. We basically talked about the roles and the skills and the competencies and the mindsets of the junior developer, the senior developer, and the architect. In some sense, you could argue that those are the backbone of the software development effort. But of course, there are a lot of additional kinds of people and roles that we need. And this is what we're going to talk about in this episode. So then, just to give you a quick overview, we're going to talk about a technologist, about the team lead, about the requirements engineer, about the product manager, and the project lead or project manager. Let's start off with a technologist. I guess the technologist, as the name implies, has some very specific knowledge about very specific technologies and maybe concepts or approaches, right?
Right. Technologist really focuses on the technology, as the name implies. And this is basically not the architect. The guy who knows most about the technology and is in love with the technology shouldn't be the architect. So that is also motivation for me to really separate those two. And with the technologist, we differentiated, and this is based on a discussion we had before, between the evangelist and the technology consultant. So how do you see the difference between those two?
Well, I guess the technology consultant actually focuses on solving real problems in real projects, whereas the evangelist typically has more of a marketing / propaganda / convince potential customers role. So he works with nice examples, he communicates a lot, he comes up with a lot of PowerPoints that explains things, whereas the technology consultant really uses the technology in real mission-critical environments.
So when the general task of a technologist would be to always be up to date on the latest technologies relevant in his certain field. So I think it's impossible to know about every kind of technology, but to be up to date on the relevant technologies, programming languages, application servers, or whatever in his domain, that would be the expectation.
Yep.
And what I also see with the technologist is that he runs the evaluations in the context of a given project and or the organization. And here it's quite important to know your constraints, to know what are the limiting factors. What is the budget of the project? What is the timeline? Do I have sufficient time to build up the knowledge with the developers? Do the developers know already the technology, or do I have a risk here? So it's really make those evaluations with a broad context where you involve all the stakeholders. This makes things complicated, but having thought once a bit broader saves you the risk and tedious efforts afterwards.
Right. And then, of course, another task is to actually help projects that struggle with a given technology or that think about introducing a certain technology, actually introducing it and help them get up to speed with it. And maybe also solve problems in which they run into as the project progresses, right?
Yeah. And as a junior developer, you might realize at a certain point in your career that instead of designing over and over new solutions, new features to your project, to your solution, you find it more interesting to learn about new technologies, to talk about those technologies, to dig deeper into the concepts behind the technologies. So that is the point where you might want to think about becoming a technologist, whereas I seldomly see that the pure role of a technologist within a company, but very often you would end up as a consultant,
right.
Maybe even for the vendor of a certain technology. And so that would be the start for your consulting career at the end.
Yeah. So what are some of the skills?
Skills is, of course, how would you expect it differently? Quick, fast understanding of new technologies, new concepts, the curiosity driven to an extreme, the curiosity to learn and dig into every new technology that you get your hand on. Okay, the next skill that I can think of is communication skill, because you need to be good in explaining others the concepts, the technology, write slides, make PowerPoint presentations, write up simple examples, and show them to others, to teach others.
And the mindset, I guess, play child, right?
Yeah, play child, constantly find it on the search for new playgrounds. And then it becomes special for the evangelist. He really likes to talk and demo, endless talks. If I think about all the evangelists that I met or listened to in the past, think, for example, about Don Box on com or later.net. There are plenty of examples where the evangelist just is so convinced he lives in that world and cannot imagine any other world. At least that is how he gets perceived by the audience.
Which is the whole point, right? I mean, you want your audience to believe that you live for and breathe for this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the technology consultant, he then really likes to solve real problems, but of course with his concrete technology. So he likes to stay with the technology, and when the technology is not applicable, he might move on to the next job, to the next opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that concludes the technologist.
Yeah. Next is the team lead.
Right.
The team lead would basically lead a development team with junior developers, senior developers, architect, and this really depends on your project setup and organization, how you define a team lead.
So is that the guy with the official direct Personalverantwortung?
Yeah, so the team lead would have disciplinary rights. Right. He would have the developers as direct reports to him.
Mm-hmm. So, skills.
There is something, of course, it's leadership, but what is leadership at the end? It's like, for me, one part of it is assertiveness. Have the strength to follow up on your promises. Next is really an interest in the people, in the growth of everybody, and that is this is then becomes already your kind of mindset. So I jump to the mindset briefly. This is help everybody to be good in their job and help everybody to get better every day.
Yeah. So this comes down to this coaching thing.
This is coaching. This is coaching juniors. Have a plan for every team member, how to raise them, how to educate them, how to give them the challenges they need so that they can grow on it.
Right. And again, if we talk about coaching, that does not mean that you actually train them every day. You're the one who manages their growth in their career.
Right.
And again, go back to the Manager Tools podcast. They have very specific advice on how to do coaching as opposed to training. I think, and I guess you agree, they have really interesting stuff to say in this context.
Right. They have plenty of tools. And, the podcast is called Manager Tools, and it's really tools. For the team lead in this case. Next skill I like to talk about is courage. Be strong enough to make tough decisions and give honest feedback to your team members.
With tough decisions, you don't mean technical decisions. You mean decisions like, I don't know, you're not very well suited for this team. Why don't you go somewhere else? Things like that. That was tough.
I don't know when then you shouldn't have accepted this guy in your team in the first place, or give him a task that he can really perform on. But at the end, when you realize, this guy just has changed his interest, and the project, the organization is no longer his first interest, then there is the tough call necessary, and say, so this is the direction that we as organization like to follow. Are you with us or are you out?
Yeah, I just wanted to distinguish it from technological and project decisions, which are done by the architect.
Yeah, I know, but this is always like a very sensitive topic. I try to give a careful and cautious explanation for it, where you have a social responsibility for the guys that are with guys and girls that are with you, that are in your team, but also you have an employer interest in really having a high performing team and everybody committed to the same goals. And when that is endangered, you are asked to make decisions. Yes.
Do you expect? Yeah, go ahead.
And this is different from technology decisions that you better leave to your senior developer and architect, and not make the technical decisions by yourself for the team. So
the team lead, should he have been a developer, or is it okay if he's like, I don't know, a manager, or however you become one? or what do you think there?
I like team leads personally that have an experience in software development, because only then they truly understand how a software developer feels, what the pain daily is, what testing means, what kind of potential careers the subordinates might aspire, and have a good gut feeling for the material. And at the end of the day, you're also responsible for the result of it. And with that, it helps having a good knowledge about it. Know exactly what the guys are doing and living and breathing every day.
Okay, makes sense. Anything else to add to the
No, I think we are through with the team lead. We had the mindset already. Really be the people person.
Okay, yeah. So next one is the requirements guy, engineer or analyst.
Yeah, with the requirements analyst, like we leave now this software developer kind of track, the technical track, the solution track. We enter more now, as we said in the PLE episodes, the problem space.
Right, so the requirements guys are the problems.
They are the problems? No, they are not the problems. They deal with the problem.
I see. Okay.
And they shouldn't deal with the solutions. And well, if they deal with the solutions, they become the problem. Yes, then then we really have a problem.
Yeah. So what are the skills? So why don't you first explain briefly what this guy does, so people?
So the requirements engineer analyst, he would talk to the customer. Translate the customer language in a technical, proper, concrete, and not how should I say it, in a unique communication way, so that the requirements are clear. What I want to say that the requirements must be precise at the end of the day, and all the vagueness and uncertainty that the customer has in his demands and his wishes, you should filter out, but not filter out by your own decision, but ask the customer that many questions till you are kind of sure what he really means. I mean, we all know at the end of a project, the customer has meant it differently and has still many more wishes that you can only resolve when you give him early a chance to give feedback and show him an early prototype or similar things.
Yeah. Let me briefly add to that 3 comments. First comment would be that, yes, of course, we know and we are aware of the fact that you can only really solve all the inconsistencies in requirements once you actually implement. But there is, that would be the developer. But there is still a lot of stuff the requirements analyst has to do to clean up inconsistencies and stuff that doesn't make any sense together. I have seen many requirements analysts who basically just wrote down all the crap the customer told them. And that's not very helpful. They have to do, actually, as you said, they have to filter things, they have to make things consistent and find out stuff that doesn't go together.
Yes.
And the final comment is that, of course, in a more agile environment, you do this extremely iteratively. You might write, stories or whatever you call these things. So we don't say that you have to do this big design or big analysis up front, but somebody needs to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So starting off with the skills, I would start off with creativity, finding new ways of how to address the customer problems, because the requirements analyst makes already decisions on how the solution in what kind of direction it will evolve with every statement, with every sentence. He shapes the potential solution space. He's involved in the scoping. When we get to the product manager, he really does then the scoping for what the product, what kind of features are in and out. But at the detail level, the requirements analyst, when describing a feature, he makes already conscious choices on what to support, what not to support. So creativity and solution finding is really a skill necessary. And next, this is one of the most important things, organizing things, getting the world structured, getting it consistent, being in love with ordered things, next is also the analysis skills, be able to dig down into the domain, envision potential solutions on usability, make decisions, know the consequences on usability. So usability kind of kicks in depending on whether you have explicit usability engineers or whether you as a requirements analyst have already to ensure the usability.
Yeah, you mentioned the idea or this concept of explaining things. I found that very useful. If you as the requirements person actually turn around and explain to the customer what you understand from what they just told you, that helps clarify things quite a bit. So you have to be able to communicate what you just learned in a cleared up way.
Yeah. Next is the knowledge, the competencies, and here the domain experience is something that you should really have, because without really knowing the customers, the domain of the customers, you're not really good in elaborating and writing down the requirements for potential solutions in that domain. So this is, I guess, more important than the software developer background, where we had already a brief discussion at the beginning whether a software development background is necessary or not. I guess it's helpful, but sometimes it can also lead you on the wrong track, that you specify solutions and not problems. So domain experience is something, and the knowledge about concepts, and maybe also potential technologies and their limitations, because you will have to state some abilities, and doing it just blankly without any technology understanding, you won't be a good sparrings partner for the architect. The architect should have the responsibility and knowledge about the technology that is in focus, which could be potentially be used, and how he could fulfill the abilities with it. But I mean, it's always a good thing when there is a conscious choice and negotiation and discussion with the requirement analyst on those topics with the architect. So this is the requirements engineer would talk with the architect, and the architect with the requirements engineer. This is one connection that I already see.
Yeah, so I guess it's useful, or maybe even necessary, that also for the requirements guy, the person should have been a developer before.
Yeah, I mean, it helps definitely. There's some danger, as I said, but generally I believe it helps as we are in the software, and software behaves different than our typical hardware construction projects. It's better if you understand it and then respect that something just during development has a high risk, and that you cannot plan and lay out months and years ahead of what you will achieve, but yet you have the respect and understanding for the development team, that there are uncertainties, that sometimes it's just pure research that those guys are doing, and that they might end up saying after 2 iterations or so, well, we can't do it that way. Think of another way on how to achieve this usability, because this technology won't support it, because it's too expensive or whatever.
Yep. So what's the mindset of the requirements analyst?
Get the most customer value for the cost. So really be thinking about what is the consequence of getting it developed this way. I want to get out the most features, the most functionality, the most customer value satisfaction out of what the development costs. And this is something that you as requirements engineer, even more so as a product manager, can influence. And this is something that's pretty hard to know the business, the customer value of a certain feature, but only that at the end really is the determining metric to drive the decisions. It's not what a individual person likes, it's what you can get out on customer value at the end of the day.
So you're also the one who prioritizes requirements, who assigns a risk to them, and then helps the customer together with the customer. You then decide which of those requirements actually go into a product or into an iteration.
Yes, I've never been in a situation where we managed all potential features we always needed to prioritize, and here the requirements engineer, he really helps and does the prioritization from a customer point of view.
Okay, so I guess the product manager to some extent is a very senior requirements engineer. Is that fair to say?
That's a senior requirements engineer as we define it here. Of course, there are different interpretations and definitions floating around. The product manager, as the name says, is responsible for one or several products, and keeps an eye on the focus, is responsible for the scope of the development going on, and saying this is in, this is out, and I need to have it developed within this time frame, then I can market it, else it will be too late, and these are the mandatory features. Those are optional, and he will have typically contact maybe even a group of requirements engineers that is then further specifying and detailing the features.
Right. Skills?
visionary thinking, be able to communicate with all kind of stakeholders, be able to perfectly speak the customer language, and then basically now we get into some Scrum or Agile methodology and terminology. You're the product owner. You own this product. It's your baby. You take care of it. You need to take care that it survives. That you spend your available money, and the money is mostly the resources, the effort of the development team, wise, and to get the most out of it.
So I guess then this guy in classical product development is like the proxy for the potential customers.
Yeah, he's the customer proxy.
Yeah, and he also probably then has to have a good understanding of the market. So if you do a real project, then you have one customer and you can just ask him whether he wants a feature or not, and then you have to prioritize it. But if you develop a product, then your job is also the market analysis to find out which of the features are important for for the biggest possible subset of the potential customers, or however you should say that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the product manager has the customer viewpoint within an organization.
Yeah. Okay.
The mindset. Well, for the knowledge we had already, he's a senior requirements engineer and just more experience, more breadth. For the mindset, challenge the development department, challenge the architect, challenge them to find the cheapest solution for the best customer value. I mean, cheap not in the sense of low quality, but challenge them to apply pragmatism, to not invest in things that you can never sell, where you never have a benefit. Here we are with reusability. Can you ever sell reusability to a customer? Most probably not. But this, depending on the...
I agree, but I mean, we're getting into this product line discussion, right?
Yeah, we're getting into the product line discussion. So we can put it to an end. I mean, reusability when the customer really cares about it. When you develop a platform that your customer is then using to build products on top of it. But as long as you have no open interfaces, as long as you don't provide a platform to the customer won't be able really to appreciate your reuse. And so it's mostly an effectiveness topic within your own organization. And,
that's the point. You might have several customers with similar but not identical products. And then,
it might make your development efforts cheaper after a certain number of development projects with a similar scope.
Right. Okay, just one comment. Okay. Since we say the product manager is a senior requirements engineer, and since we say the requirements engineer has to have been a developer, this implies that the product manager also has been a developer. I have seen it differently in practice, so I'm not absolutely sure here. I would qualify that. I'm not sure if you agree, but I would say the guy has to have been with the development team for long enough so he understands the constraints of software development. But I've seen a lot of product managers who have never been developers and they're still good product managers.
I agree. I mean, there you have the requirements engineer who at the end of the day can support you in making more software or solution space-oriented decisions. As a product manager, you first have to be visionary. You have to have the customer focus. You must have the cost, the business value focus. And of course, you should get feedback from the architect, get a sanity check from various peers and stakeholders. Yes, the other skills and mindset is more important than your software development background.
Okay, this brings us to the last of the roles, which is the project lead or project manager, right? So what's this guy doing?
Yes.
What are his tasks or her tasks?
This guy ensures that the development stays within the given time, cost, and the content promises that the team development team gave. He tracks those efforts, those achievements, and leads the project to a hopefully positive end.
So is that more an organizational role?
I wouldn't call it organizational role. It's really a project focus. So the project has a certain duration. It has a start. It has an end. It has a goal. It has a cost plan. What it's supposed to cost. What's the available. Yeah. What's the necessary effort. And he needs to control and steer, actively steer those efforts. Make decisions whenever there's a decision necessary, a trade-off to be made, and drive the project through, help to resolve obstacles. Yeah, basically that.
So skills, you should know the template by now. So skills.
Yeah. So should he have been a developer once? Yes, no. I guess yes, at least a junior for some time, knowing what's the properties of software. How does software behave? Don't be disappointed when it doesn't behave as your last hardware construction project and get frustrated. Know the domain, know software development. And I guess you can only know it when you lived once in it. So the skills, it's assertiveness. Be really strict when you need to be strict. Stay with your decisions and drive them through. You're the bad conscience of a project, and you should find the weak spots, put the finger in, get to the ground, get transparency, make decisions together with the stakeholders. But I guess your manager will hold you responsible for the success or failure of a project. Networking, because again, you have typically no disciplinary rights on your colleagues. So you have to rely on your network, on your communication skills, how to convince and get the job done.
This sounds to me a little bit like this matrix stuff that the Manager Tools guys talked about in an episode in June 2008, right? Did you hear that?
I'm not sure. Can you elaborate?
Well, they just talked about the matrix organization, where the person who actually is the official boss, the disciplinary boss of people, is not the same person as the project lead, and therefore there is this matrix of people, and because, as they say, a matrix organization attenuates power, networking is extremely important, so you can actually make yourself heard and get things done.
Yeah, so it's exactly that point. People, everybody has a boss, an organizational and disciplinary boss, and then there's the project within the organization where the project boss is the project lead.
Yeah, and by the way, the Manager Tools guys hate matrix organizations.
Okay.
Competencies?
Competencies, yes, and this is the reason why I said, well, have some software developer background, because you should know about software development processes, know software development processes with their consequences, with the benefits and trade-offs, help to select the right process for the project, and know how to constantly improve your process.
Okay.
The Nexus Metrics, here again, a good software understanding helps you to find the right metrics on bug reports, on quality metrics, on test coverage metrics, that help you to achieve transparency, the transparency that you need to make decisions that you base on your decisions, because very often you will be faced with situations where it's like a not like a black hole, but like a black box where you can't really view in, like during an iteration when guys are using HL methodologies, iterative incremental development processes. Within an iteration, it's very often not transparent what the status, what the result will be. And there you just need to trust on metrics, on what does the build say, what it will then most probably be the final result of an iteration. Hopefully you have that much trust that you can wait till the end of an iteration. If you want to know more what's going on, watch the metrics.
Alternatively, you can also make the iteration very short.
Right.
And that gives you more insight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then everybody will complain about a huge replanning effort every other week, and so you will need to find a trade-off with the development team on the iteration length.
So just to say this very clearly, the project lead or project manager is the person who is responsible for the process, maybe supported by some, process coach in the same sense as we've had the technologist for technologies, but he's the owner of the process.
Yeah. So mindset, I put it that way. Every milestone slippage is a private failure.
You mean a personal failure?
Personal failure. I mean, this is pretty tough and exaggerated, but I know guys who live it that way, and well, it's not fun being in their project sometimes. It's demanding. But then also very satisfying when you really achieve it. And those guys, they know how to achieve it. So you're going to be successful with them. They will be a pain in the neck for you. They will challenge you. They will try to get transparency on any issue. But this is good. This is healthy. And you will have successful projects, hopefully.
Okay, I guess this was the last of the roles, right?
This was the last of the roles, and now coming back to a promise we made at the beginning of the first roles episode. This was how does this actually map to an HL environment?
Right.
So now are those roles totally crap in an HL context? Would you throw everybody off board and say, well, we don't need a project lead anymore, we don't have a requirements engineer, we only have the team and the scrum master, and of course, yes, you need some product owner. The product. So we start off with the product owner. Product owner is somebody like a product manager and requirements engineer. But the product owner, at least when you really scale up, he's also responsible for the overall timeline, keeping an eye on the timeline, on the quality. He will either accept or reject a delivery of a feature team. So there's also something of a project lead in a product owner. So that is.
And product owner, just to be specific, is a trademark term from the Scrum.
So I refer to the Scrum product owner here. Then within the team, I guess you have the tester. You have, of course, the developers. You most probably will have an architect. This architect, I don't know, sometimes he's really within a Scrum team. Sometimes he might be shared. It depends on your working model. So those roles are still valid also in a Scrum context. So all in all, the roles are cut a bit different, but they still make sense, and you can find a meaningful mapping. And having seen some organizations who transition to an HL methodology, the people were all needed at the end of the day. They sometimes were required to have a different mindset. So that changed a bit, because you might not rely so much more on the strict definition of roles and responsibilities, but you more rely on the team as it takes the responsibility. So how to summarize it? There is a mapping. The mapping makes sense, and you can really argue on the mapping. It's meaningful. It's not trivial, and transformations to agile are successful when you really think on the mapping and make that a conscious choice.
Okay. So before we close down this second episode, let me add or ask about two topics that came to my mind while we recorded it. One is QA. QA is more than testing, I guess. I mean, there's a lot of reviewing going on. There is maybe, I mean, do you see QA, quality assurance, as a separate thing? Or, what's your opinion on that?
QA has two sides for me. I mean, one is really the practical aspect where they closely work together with the testers. Sometimes they might even test themselves, I guess. At least that would be a good idea, I think. The other is that they really take you up as a development organization on your promises, on your process. They ensure that you stick to the process. And for example, in some restricted or regulated domains, like the medical domain, they will also make sure that you comply with your process to the regulations so that you're at the end of the development allowed to release your product to the corresponding market.
And the second and promised final thing I had was staffing. Who is responsible for hiring new people? Well, probably it's not the junior developers, but how do you organize that? Where do you put that responsibility?
It's the team lead, and I would suggest then really involving your senior guys in the interviews, checking on the mindset, checking on the chemistry, how does this guy fit into the team, and there involve your seniors getting feedback as a team lead or R&D head. I guess that's pretty common standard.
Good. Okay. Is there anything else you want to add before we close this down?
No, I think we went through a whole set of
yes.
of roles. There are of course more roles out there. The ones that we didn't cover, we don't intend to say they're not important. We just try to have a limited focus and scope for the episodes.
And we already recorded for about 96, 98 minutes in a row, so I guess it's probably enough.
Hopefully this is was worthwhile for you to listen to, and you got something out. If you have any thoughts, and I guess there are many thoughts, please let us know on the website. Add some comment to the episode. We're looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So thank you all for listening. Thanks, Michael, for talking.
Thank you.
And talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for downloading and listening to Software Engineering Radio. Software Engineering Radio is an educational program brought to you by Hillside Europe. If you want more information about the podcast and all the other episodes, visit our website at se-radio.net. If you want to support us, you can donate to the SE Radio team via the website, or you can advertise for SE Radio, for example by clicking on the Dig, Reddit, Delicious and Slashdot buttons. To contact the team, please send email to team@se-radio.net, or if it is specific to an episode, please use the comments facility on the website so other people can react to your comments. This episode of SE Radio, as well as all other episodes, are licensed under a Creative Commons 2.5 license. Please see the website for details. Thanks to Charlie Crow and the Podsafe Music Network for the music used in this show. The song is called Vegas Hard Rock Shuffle.